were focusing mainly on what is good for everybody.
And therefore in Hyderabad.
There was a factory which was 8 times the size of my factory in one shed.
And how did it grow from there?
It's a very interesting story.
Where are the opportunities, new opportunities coming?
The ecosystem is what is lacking.
When was it, sir?
1910 actually.
What was the reason why?
I wouldn't be sure. There was no proper livelihood there.
The initial settlement was in Bolaram.
My father realized that trading is not good enough.
How do you look at that business?
We were the first steel suppliers to Bokoro steel plant.
That business, as we see often,
The smallest thing which you can think of.
which is now taking India to the world's third largest economy.
So it's a very interesting thing if you look at it.
We are talking of a post-91 liberalization era.
Now it has become much more competitive.
How was the transition happening?
So nail comes from wires. So we started making wires.
But what is it that we need to do to
Anything where copper can be used, we make the copper.
Welcome to Conversations on HYBIZ. I'm Suresh Kochatel. Business, as they come down in generation, usually father to son or daughter, and then it goes down the line. The businesses keep changing. The mode of business changes, the lines of business change, but the generation survives. One such is the Surana family from Hyderabad. Today I have with me Devendra Surana ji, the Managing Director of Surana Group, to chat with us about his life, business, and how things have gone. Welcome to the show, sir. Namaskar. So let me start with the basics. I know the Surana family came to Hyderabad quite some time ago. When was it, sir?
1910 actually.
1910, the family was here. And you all came from Rajasthan?
All came from Rajasthan.
Okay. What was the reason why the family migrated?
So I think I wouldn't be sure, but most of the people came here because of drought in Rajasthan. There was no proper livelihood there. So people kept moving from Rajasthan all over the country in search of livelihood, in search of a better living.
And therefore in Hyderabad, because it was under Nizam's
Yes.
rule at that time.
Our family came to Hyderabad for whatever reason.
Okay. Now and of course, the initial settlement was in Bolaram.
That's right.
At the outer fringes of Secunderabad. Now, of course, it's a part of Secunderabad. But coming from there, your father started the business, isn't it? And that business, as we see often, is a business that has now continued with generations, isn't it?
That is true.
How do you look at that business?
So it's very interesting. My father first started with grain trading to the defense. And it's so interesting that we were the first steel suppliers to Bokoro steel plant.
Wow.
We were agents for the Russian steel which went into the construction of Bokoro steel plant. But as time passed, my father realized that trading is not good enough. He started with a very, very modest nail factory.
Nail, as much as the nails that you have.
That's right. The smallest thing which you can think of. That's what he started way back in 1960s.
And how did it grow from there? I mean, he must have not sat on the laurels of starting a nail factory.
So it's a very interesting story. If you look at our entire family, we went very logically from one product to another. So nail comes from wires. So we started making wires.
Okay.
And then wires, there are some parallel projects along with wires. We started making barbed wires and so on. So it kept on growing from there.
And the diversification, of course, would have come from the generation that came next. You and your brother bought it up. But there again, how was the transition happening? Before that, in fact, I would even like to ask you about where did you study in Hyderabad? Which are the schools you had gone to? And what was your education after that, the formal education?
I'm quite proud of what happened. In hindsight, it looks like it has all been planned. So I studied in probably the best school, Hyderabad Public School, which has given probably the greatest leaders in the world. Then I went to my alma mater, College of Engineering, Osmania University. Very interesting offside is that in the MSET exam which happens, I got a rank of 28, which was the best rank which finally went to the college. And then after that, I did my MBA from IIM Bangalore, which is again one of the top institutions. And I think those 2 years in IIM Bangalore were one of the finest years which you could think of, both in terms of personal development, in terms of learning, in terms of making friends. So everything went off very well. And I topped it off by being voted as the brain of the batch.
Wow. So that is quite a competence that you have brought forth.
Yeah.
Engineering, management, and then you got into the family business.
That's right.
But did your father first give you the reins to you and your brother, or did you go through the usual shop floor methods to learn the ropes of the trade?
Not really. I think we started off almost at the top. So literally you could say we were second in command to dad when we started off business. And my dad was that way very, very proactive for those days. He gave us a lot of freedom in doing what we wanted to do and left it to us. And what was very interesting is my brother took up a different vertical and I took up a different vertical. And both of us thrived and succeeded like nobody's business.
Usually in family business, and we see this across, maybe the first generation starts it, the second generation nurtures it, but by the time it comes to the third generation, usually they want to break free, they want to go independent, they want to do something else. Maybe it's to do with the generation itself that grows up in that. But you and your brother, despite having two different verticals, you are running the business from the same building, the same place, and of course, continue to do so. But when you look at the same business, which business were you doing? What was your brother doing?
So my brother went into the telecom vertical. So we started off with doing just jointing kits. Then we went into telecom cables, then fiber optic cables, and then solar power. So that was a total different vertical which he kept on moving into. And I started in the copper business, which was there with our family even before I joined the business. But it was a very interesting journey. Initially, we were just doing some commodity work. And I realized very early on in my career that commodity will not work. For the first 15 years of my career, I was only looking at forward integration. So every time I went to the factory, I was looking at what next? What can I do to the copper to add value to the copper? So instead of doing commodity, I kept on adding value for the first 15, 20 years. Then for the last 10 years now, I've been looking at how I can do backward integration. How can I reduce the cost of my copper which goes into my product?
So do you really get into the mining part of it also?
No, we get into the secondary part of it where we recycle cable scrap and other things.
So from there, the copper industry, and we know that where a lot of things happened with Sterlite and other companies in the metal business also. India still has issues. We have some issues coming up in Telangana with tungsten in Tamil Nadu.
Yeah.
All that is there. But when you look at the business as such, I mean, we are talking of a post-91 liberalization era after Mr. Narasimha Rao started. And recently I was reading that the actual uptick happened after 2001. And maybe it took 10 years for that kind of liberalization to come into effect. But when you look at the entire picture, when you look at the business, was it very competitive those days?
So it's a very interesting thing if you look at it. Earlier, the business was not very competitive. Now it has become much more competitive, but the scope has become so much bigger. When it was not competitive, it was a very small scale. I remember the first time I went to China for a visit, and I always thought I was one of the biggest producers of copper in South India, and I had my collars up and, so what have you. And when I went to China, they took us for a factory visit. Within one shed, there was a factory which was 8 times the size of my factory in one shed. So it really humbled me. But at the same time, it gave me a fillip to see if they can do it, why can't we increase it? I mean, I was resting on my laurels. We are big in South India, #1, but nowhere near world scale. So that was the situation way back in 90s. As we move closer now, we look at world scale. We see much bigger scope, whereas the competition is much higher. There is very little places where you don't have transparency. Because of transparency, you can't really make abnormal profits. But at the same time, the volumes can be so large that you can make up with that.
So when you speak of China, quite often we say that, or rather we are told that India missed the manufacturing bus. Now we are catching up with China. The US is putting tariffs on Chinese products, especially the manufacturing sector. But when you look at India and China, maybe we adopted the socialist model, the 5-year plan and all that kind of stuff, which stifled our growth. But are there lessons that we can learn from China? Because you specifically spoke of the volume business of theirs.
Yes. I think, the good thing about China is great volume. Volumes are so high. Then they have a lot of ecosystem which is built in. The biggest thing which I rue about the Indian industry is that we don't really have an ecosystem. If I have to do something for my factory, right from the spares to the management, everything has to be done in-house. Whereas in China, because all the furniture people are at one place, all the lighting people are at one place, there is such a big ecosystem that the support systems which come for that, the ancillaries which come for them are in very well developed. And that's what makes them so much more competitive.
In terms of volume business, when you say manufacturing sector actually, the Chinese government, of course, must be bankrolling a lot of this because I keep reading about that. in terms of state support, in terms of a lot of things. Maybe India is now catching up with state offering incentives to companies that are coming in. But when you look at not just your business per se, even to get say a plant to be set up to expand your plant, possibly most of the machinery would come from China. Correct me if I'm wrong, sir.
Right now, I'm getting a lot of my machines from China. Unfortunate, but true.
But what is it that we need to do to get that being made in India?
So the ecosystem is what is lacking. It's not that the people here are not having the ambition. They have the ambition. They have the capability. Unfortunately, the support ecosystem is slowly coming up. So just to correct you here, I mean to interject you, not correct you, if you look at the automobile industry,
Correct.
we have built the ecosystem. So we can compete with anybody.
The mobile phone industry too.
The two-wheelers, probably we have even exceeded the ecosystem of China. So that is what is happening slowly. Even for the machinery, if you see, especially in North India, around Delhi, there is such a nice ecosystem coming up that now everything is coming up much faster. The machinery manufacturers in China actually don't manufacture. They only assemble.
So when you look at copper as a business, we'll come back to your primary source of business. In terms of variations of the product that you make, where are the opportunities, new opportunities coming from?
It's very interesting. I learn from our customers. I learn from the market. So whenever my customer says, this is what I require. So suppose we make something for transformers. Earlier, we used to make paper-covered conductors. Then we make enamel strip. Then we make transposed conductors. So we keep adding products for an existing customer. We really don't get into too fancy market research. It's so easy to understand if you keep your ears open and if you ask your marketing team to keep your ears open, where the next opportunity lies. It's a very simple thing. One man's poison is another man's food. If my customer has a pain point, that is my opportunity. That is my simple philosophy of growing business. So now we are into auto components, we are into wire for solar welding, we are into switchgear for copper for switchgear. Anything where copper can be used, we make the copper for that.
You did speak about the uptick in business and you said there is so much of opportunity now. What is it that you're seeing in the last, we'll take 10 years for example. What changes have you seen in the last 10 years, which is now taking India to the world's third largest economy?
Obviously, the GDP growth has given the basic fillip to the economy. But if you look at, especially in the copper industry, it used to be a very fragmented, unorganized industry. So the two big problems, what people think, one is the demonetization and the GST, has forced the industry into an organized sector. That has given us an opportunity to consolidate the entire business in the organized way and grow it much faster. So all the three factors put together, you can say 2 into 2 into 2 makes it 8 times.
When you look at the industry as such, there are so many lobbying groups today. There is CII, there is FAPCCCI, and then there are of course regional associations that kind of speak for the industry. I will not use the word lobbying, speak for the industry, especially before the budget session comes up. The industry has certain requests and demands and all that. You've been part of all these associations, number one. Can you just enumerate them for us?
So I was president of the local chambers, Federation of Andhra Pradesh Chambers of Commerce and Industry. And it's been a very interesting journey. Those again were very helpful for me to grow, and I felt that I could give a voice to the industry. See, it's very interesting that we need to put our point of view without rancor, but with force. So I used to joke with my IIS friends that you made me a professional beggar. But the fact is that we needed to do that. See, if you remember those days about 10 or 12 years back, we used to have huge power cuts.
Correct.
So I was single-handedly, I feel, responsible for getting industry from the 4th or 5th level. It used to be agriculture, houses, commercial, and then industrial. I was instrumental in getting it to number 1 or number 2 because we are the people who pay the government the money. The others don't. We have bulk consumption and we'll still treat it in a stepmotherly way. So we had to forcefully put the argument that you need to give us preference, and if we don't get the power, you don't get the revenue. So that's how, that was one of the main lobbying points which at that point of time. And I felt that we had reasonable success in doing that. And that was one part of it. Again, something which I sometimes like to boast. I had the opportunity to preside over an event in which the President of India was there. So, those type of opportunities come, and it was also very interesting to get all the people in industry together. You have a plethora of voices, and like you said, everybody has a different interest group. How can we put it together in one way? Because in a lot of places, one person's request is different from others. But in so many other ways, everybody has a common goal. Everybody meaning the industry, the government, and the public. So we were focusing mainly on what is good for everybody. That becomes much easier to put forth. Suppose I want something which is against the interest of a consumer. It becomes very difficult. So that difference is what helped me.
Ease of doing business, that's what each government, state government, and also the national level, we are ranked with other countries also in terms of how easy is it to do business. When you were in the early days, I'm sure it was a license raj, we were just coming out of it. There was inspections galore, there would be people coming and asking for money and a lot of things from the government sector. Do you think over the years the government has become, I'm talking about the state and the central government, have become very proactive in terms of attracting industries to come and put the money and start a business and generate employment?
So I'll give you my own example. When my father wanted to start the copper business, he started before I joined the business. To get the license, it took him literally 4 years.
4 years.
That was in the 80s. And as soon as 92 happened and the deregulation happened, within 6 months of that, my brother set up our cable unit. For us, that was a great ease of business. And as we go further, in lots of places, it has become much more easier. We don't have to think of all those things which used to, be in our mind. Of late, especially in a state like Andhra Pradesh or Telangana, we literally can start business very, very fast. Sometimes we take the risk knowing fully well that even before the permissions come, we can start. We know that as long as we are going to follow the protocols, there won't be any hindrance. So even before the permissions come, you can do the groundbreaking and the groundwork, and half the work is done by the time the permissions are in place. So that confidence in the government is there that yes, I won't be stopped. So that is happening.
You did your IIM from IIM Bangalore. Management obviously would be the strong point. There you would have learned a lot of things in the campus, but applying it practically to the work atmosphere is a different ball game altogether. Now, when you are looking at a management scenario today, maybe 20 years ago, there was no chasing of talent, but today there is a scarcity of talent in some industries. I'm not sure whether it's there in yours, but it is there in some industries. Do you think the problem in India is it employment or unemployment? Are we getting the right skilled people, or we are not getting them?
You asked me a question for which I'm very passionate. So
Please go on.
I am from IIM Bangalore. There are 140 students in my batch. 100 were engineers, mostly from IITs. All fantastic technical guys. What happened to them 20 years down the line? Other than 4 of us, everybody is in service industry. The sad part about talent in India is for manufacturing, there's not enough talent. All the good talent, the first wave, I call it the 3 waves. The first wave in the 1950s to 75, 80, all went to the government. And pardon me for saying this, they were spoiled by the government. The second wave all went to US. They thrived, but didn't serve us. The third wave has all gone to IT, not to industry. So the shortage of good talent at top levels is missing. And if you don't have good talent at the top level, it's very difficult to build a chain down the line. I think that is the biggest problem for industry.
So the problem is also there at the bottom end. Today we're saying that to get a plumber or to get an electrician is more tougher. But if you want an IT guy, go to Amirpet and throw a stone and it will fall on.
Exactly. So you've got all the talent migrating to IT. So the problem is not the plumber. The problem is who's going to train the plumber. The second, the person above that who should have, all these IT guys who have gone to IT, if they were in industry, they would have trained the plumbers better. There's nobody to train them. There's a big vacuum right from the MD level to the lower level.
And we say we have a problem of unemployment. I keep saying that actually we have a problem
of unemployment. The problem of
unemployment
is not really severe. It is there to a certain extent. But the problem is of mismatch, especially in industry, in the middle levels. I've seen over the last 5 years this getting corrected very well. To take some part of the blame ourselves, industry never paid good amount of money. So obviously I can't blame the people to take the best salary. Now salaries in industry have really gone up. So talent is coming in. And with whatever the flaws of the PLI and other schemes, manufacturing has started attracting big talent.
So you were in the industry, you are in the part of the industry forums. Obviously public speaking is an art for you. You love speaking. That's what I'm told. What is it that attracts you to public speaking, and where all have you gone speaking about?
So I started enjoying talking right after IIM, and especially my roles as FAPCCI and other places. I was asked to speak a lot of places, and instead of just giving those trite messages of goodwill and other things, I started looking at what is of value to people. So I speak on various things like entrepreneurship, on sometimes even on philosophy, happiness, and other things. And I've given a talk at every B college in Hyderabad. Literally every B college, from the lowest rung of B colleges to ISB, to IIT, to triple IT.
What is it that the next generation next to us studying in B schools looking for? As you rightly said, most of them get into consulting jobs, or they get into, as you said, IT sector. But is the industry today ready to accept these youngsters who are now looking for startups? So today you're seeing crazy valuations of startups who don't even have a factory or anything for that matter, unlike you. There's no capex, there is no asset, but they have valuations. Do you think it's a dangerous game being played? Because we saw some companies go bust who had crazy valuations, 22 billion and upwards. Today they are biting the dust. Do you think there should be a measure of reality when it comes to startups?
See, everything cannot be measured, and market is sometimes the best arbitrator. Startups are a very interesting area, especially for youngsters, because ideas are getting generated, because new things are happening, and I think the startups are the people who will disrupt the world, and disruption is where the value will get created. People like us who are in manufacture can do only incremental valuations. We can only increase the valuations to us in probably a arithmetic progression.
Sure.
The startups are the ones which will really
Demonstrate.
boost it.
But when you look at them, because I'm obviously sure that your children, when they take up business and when they do business, and some of them will join you in the business as a third generation, their ideas would be far more radical than kind of very serious, very planned way that you and your brother would operate.
So, not in my family. In my family, everybody is come into the fore. Probably, in a Marwadi family, they keep hearing about business. They keep hearing the family members talk about business. They are exposed to the factory. They do internships in the factory right from probably 11th class and 12th class. So they have understood the game. But yes, they do get in a lot of aggressive tones into the business. So my son has done industrial engineering in US, and he's joined my business. And he was very clear from day one that I'm not looking at any other options. I've done industrial engineering. I see a lot of scope happening here. So he's straight away come back to business.
You're lucky that way, actually.
Yeah, absolutely.
But in a sense, because today's India is not the India maybe 20 years ago. It's changed a lot. Today, when you speak to the generation next, one, they don't have time. They don't have time to listen to you, which is why the Instagram was created, so that everything would be said in 30 seconds. But when you look at the opportunities in India today, the kind of opportunities being not just in the startup sector, I'm talking of the other way also. Today, you're seeing small startups selling mushrooms to somebody doing something else and creating wealth. Today, you're seeing your own IIM fraternity leaving cushy jobs to take up risky ventures, which possibly you or your brother would not have thought about. Do you see a change in attitude coming about in today's generation, not just startups, generally as such?
Generally, it is there. See, it obviously comes from the security. Once you have a sense of security that nothing is going to go wrong in terms of your basic requirements, people take that risk. And also, people see a lot of success stories all over the place. So, people are much more willing to take that extra risk. So, your generation and my generations have seen people suffer because of lack of security. That problem is no longer there anywhere in the environment. So that gives a chance for people to take that leap of faith.
In fact, when you talk about mentorship, when you talk about looking up to people, there are many people who say, you know what, I like to be, or I admire this gentleman or this lady. Were there any role models for you apart from your father when you took up the business?
Well, you are right. First role model was my father, and it's so easy to get into anything when you have such a role model who is, you know, an example in all ways. So even now, whenever I think of any problems, and I just mentally think that if I was to repeat this problem to my dad, what would he say? What are the questions he'll ask? And what are the things which he'll sell? And 9 out of 10 times I come up with a solution. So mentorship, yes. But on the other side, in addition to my dad, I mean, my brother has been a mentor, and I've found a lot of mentors. So we formed an organization called E.O and then YPO. So the advantage of that is we get to interact with the brains of the world.
Who is who?
The important is not who's who, the brains of the world, the people who have the knowledge, the people who have the vision, and the people who had the conviction to follow through. So you learn a lot from them. And typically, every month you meet somebody from whom you can learn a lot. And that's what we need to do. I keep telling everybody that every time we get into a session, if he can take out 2 minutes of his life, 2 minutes of his words with us forever. So I have been lucky to get exposed to a huge number of very, very, for you, powerful, for me, inspirational.
In fact, when you interact with such people, of course, that day I was speaking to Mr. R. Gopalkrishnan, the ex board member of Tata Sons, and he was, of course, speaking a lot about management philosophies. But the question would be, as a professional, when you're managing a company, what's your management style like?
Me?
Yeah.
I'm very
Is it a
easy.
hands-on? Is it a hands-off?
I'm very, very easygoing and very hands-off.
So you like to see everything being done in front of you. Possibly, when you look at management styles in different industries have different approaches. You know that very well. The IT industry has a totally different approach. The pharma industry has more of scientific bent of mind. But when you look at manufacturing sector as such, it is not as glamorous as an IT sector would be. And that in that sector, do you think the longevity of an employee within an organization is more stable than an IT sector?
Yes, that is one good advantage. It's a good way of putting a bad thing. Meaning, most of my employees are with me throughout for their life. All my senior people, 15, 20, 25 years, is not an uncommon thing for most of my employees to keep saying. So the longevity is there, but I personally would like to hope that it's because I take care of them better rather than the way some would say that they don't have opportunity outside.
Loyalty is also a factor.
Loyalty is a factor to a certain extent, but more than that, how much the organization takes care of the aspirations. I think that is more important than the loyalty in today's world. You have to keep taking care of their aspirations. And the thing which I felt good performers stay with me for a longer time is because I give them a free hand. So I have a principle in my thought process. Somebody is working on a project who's reporting to me. If it is a 60-40 decision, which I don't agree with him, I don't change it. If it is 70-30 decision, I don't change him. It's only when it becomes 80%, I feel that no, this decision might be wrong. I change him and then I give a full explanation why this has to be the other way around.
From a pressure cooker atmosphere that you work every day, what kind of breaks do you take?
I take a lot of breaks. I play golf, so it takes a lot of my time. And I like to take small breaks. I like to take big breaks.
Travel a lot?
I travel. At least I travel mainly for leisure, not much for work. At least one visit every month is what I target. 2 days, 3 days, whatever it is.
As we close this conversation, there's something that I ask every industrialist or every person I meet, not necessarily an industrialist, is how would you like to be remembered after you walked away into the sunset? You know, when sometimes you hang up your boots when you're still relatively young, and then you say, I want to be remembered for being like this.
I normally don't think of it that way because it's a little morbid. But if I have to answer that, it will be that a happy man. And anybody who remembers or hears my name should have a smile on his face.
Yeah.
Nothing more than that.
I did say, when I said walked away in sunset, I really mean today's people take retirement pretty early. So when they walk away and they say, okay, now let the next generation handle it, I'm going to relax now. So that is how they should know you.
So also of late, I've been looking at this longevity mindset. So the minute you start thinking of retirement, you get old. So I think we should have a longevity mindset. But like you said, the main thing which I want to be thought of is a person who's been happy, a person who brings smiles to everybody's faces. If you talk about my name, do you have a frown on the face or a smile on the face? I think that is the main thing which is in my mind.
Wonderful. Mr. Devendra Surana, thank you very much for speaking to us at HYBIZ. I'm sure those who are watching this video will understand what manufacturing sector is all about. Not though glamorous, but there is a lot of hard work that goes into building a business down to 3 generations now. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Devendra Surana, the Managing Director of Surana Group, an industrialist of repute, and of course, managing a second generation business from his father. But as they say, as you walk down the lane, there are 2 roads. If you take the one less traveled by, maybe it makes a lot of difference. Thank you for watching. Jai Hind.